The violent pounding on my cabin door ripped me out of sleep. It wasn't a courteous knock, it was 3 brutal strikes, the kind that sounded like someone wanted to crack the wood straight down the middle. I fumbled for my phone. 12:07 a.m. Outside, the forest sat in heavy silence, the kind that makes every noise feel deliberate. I slid out of bed, my heart thudding hard against my ribs, and crept to the door. Through the peephole, I saw her. Karen, hair stiff in tight curlers, robe cinched high around her neck, flashlight slicing across my porch like a prison searchlight. She lived down in the valley, part of the HOA that technically had zero authority over my property, yet she carried herself like she owned the entire mountain. Open this door, she barked. It's urgent. I eased it open just an inch. Karen, it's midnight. What's going on? She leaned forward, eyes sharp and calculating. I need you to let me use your cabin tonight. My cousin's family just arrived from out of state. My guest house flooded due to a plumbing issue. They can't stay in their RV, it's too cold. They'll freeze. For a moment, I thought I misunderstood her. You're asking me to hand over my cabin right now? Not hand over, she corrected, as if the wording made her demand reasonable. Just let them stay. You live alone. You can sleep in your truck. It'll only be a few nights. No, I answered evenly. This is my home. Her face tightened instantly. You're being completely unreasonable. That's not how neighbors behave. I'm not obligated, she cut me off with a sharp scoff. This community survives on cooperation. You owe us that much. Without waiting for a reply, she turned sharply and stomped down the porch steps. The crunch of her boots faded into the darkness, but the unease stayed behind. I had a sinking feeling this wasn't just a late-night argument. Something about her tone suggested I'd stepped into something bigger. The next morning, my phone buzzed with an email from the HOA. Subject line, community concern. Karen had written a lengthy message portraying me as selfish, uncooperative, and disruptive. But that wasn't the worst of it. By evening, I noticed an unfamiliar SUV drive slowly past my driveway twice. Then at 9:15 p.m., flashing red and blue lights flooded through my windows. I opened the door to find 2 sheriff's deputies standing on my porch. Evening, one said, glancing past me into the cabin. We received a report that this property may be unlawfully occupied. By me? I asked, stunned. Karen stood a few feet behind them, arms crossed, the faintest smirk playing on her lips. That was when it hit me. This was never about space for relatives. This was about power, and Karen had no intention of backing down. One deputy stepped forward, sweeping his flashlight beam across my living room. Sir, would you mind if we take a quick look inside? His voice was polite, but it carried expectation. Actually, I said carefully, I would mind. This is private property. Unless you have a warrant. Karen's voice cut through the air. He's hiding people in there. They're not even registered in the community. She stepped closer to the porch, speaking over me like I didn't exist. I told you, officer. He's renting it out under the table. That violates HOA policy. The second deputy turned to me. We just need to verify occupancy. It'll take 2 minutes. I inhaled slowly. I had nothing to hide. But the way she was framing this, refusing would make me appear guilty. Still, I wasn't surrendering my rights because she demanded it. Gentlemen, I said steadily, this has been my home for 7 years. There are no strangers here. If Karen has a legitimate complaint, she can pursue it legally. Otherwise, I'm going back inside. The first deputy studied me for a long moment, then gave a small nod. All right, sir. Have a good night. Karen's jaw dropped. You're just leaving? What if he's lying? The taller deputy exhaled. Ma'am, without probable cause. Probable cause? She shrieked. I saw him rearranging furniture. He's clearing space for. Closed the door gently, muting her voice into muffled frustration. My pulse was still racing. This wasn't simple pettiness. She had tried to use law enforcement to pressure me. By the next morning, her campaign intensified. Flyers appeared in every mailbox accusing me of threatening community safety and harboring unknown individuals. On the neighborhood Facebook page, she posted blurry photos of my driveway, circling shadows as if they were proof of some elaborate scheme. I could have ignored it, But that afternoon, while splitting firewood, I spotted her SUV parked just beyond the tree line, engine off, windows up, watching. I walked toward it, axe still in my hand. She lowered the window slowly, smiling, as she had already won. "You're making this far more difficult than necessary," she said calmly. "Let my cousin stay in the cabin for a few days, and all of this disappears." I tightened my grip on the axe handle. "You think you can bully me into giving up my home?" Her smile never wavered. "It's not bullying. It's an opportunity. You're outnumbered here, and you know it." Cold air hung between us. In that moment, I realized something unsettling. Karen wasn't bluffing. She was escalating deliberately. 2 days later, the rumble of engines woke me at dawn. I pulled back the curtain and counted 3 pickup trucks parked at the base of my driveway. All belonged to the HOA board members. Karen stood in front of them, arms crossed, flanked like a commander preparing for inspection. I stepped outside, frost crunching beneath my boots. "Morning," I called down the hill. "What's this about?" Her voice carried upward, crisp and loud. "We're conducting a safety inspection. Concerns have been raised about the condition of your cabin." I stared at her, frowning. "There is no scheduled inspection," I replied, stepping down onto the porch. "And the HOA has absolutely no jurisdiction over my property." Her grin widened, all teeth and confidence. "We voted to extend our oversight. It passed unanimously. You cannot vote to redraw property boundaries," I said evenly. "That's not how the law works." Karen descended one slow step toward me. "You can make this simple. Let us inside. Let my cousin's family stay here for a few days. The inspection disappears. Keep resisting and..." She gestured casually toward the trucks behind her. "We'll discover something. Perhaps a zoning issue. Perhaps a safety concern. The county tends to listen when we speak." My jaw tightened. "This is harassment. It's community enforcement," she corrected smoothly. Behind her, one board member lifted a camera and began snapping photos of my cabin from every possible angle. Another scribbled aggressively on a clipboard, as though documenting evidence in a criminal investigation. The standoff stretched for nearly 30 minutes before they finally drove off. But the wheels had already been set in motion. That afternoon, the county office called. An anonymous complaint alleged illegal structural changes on my property. By evening, the neighborhood Facebook group was buzzing again. Karen had posted, "If someone refuses to follow the rules, maybe they don't belong here." Comments flooded in. A handful of neighbors defended me. Others, people I had greeted for years, joined the pile-on. The worst came after sunset. A folded piece of paper was shoved under my door. "Leave before we make you .no signature." Just 6 blocky words. That night, the forest no longer felt peaceful. Every creak of the cabin's beams, every gust pushes against the siding, each sound made me wonder if someone was out there watching. I sat at my kitchen table with a mug of coffee cooling in my hands, staring at the reflection of my porch light in the window. I would not abandon my home. But I also understood something clearly now. Karen was escalating faster than I had anticipated. And if she was willing to lie to law enforcement, what would she attempt next? Snow fell overnight, blanketing everything in white silence. I was carrying firewood to the porch when I noticed fresh tire tracks cutting sharply up my driveway. No vehicle remained, but the tracks led directly to my front door, and then back down again. A cold weight settled in my stomach. I unlocked the door and stepped inside slowly, scanning every corner. The air felt wrong, disturbed. My boots squeaked across the wooden floor as I crossed into the kitchen. That was when I saw it. A manila envelope sat squarely on my table. No postage, no note. Inside were photographs, pictures of my bedroom, my pantry shelves, even the locked storage shed behind the cabin. Someone had been inside. I called the sheriff's office immediately. The deputy who answered sounded almost regretful. "Without signs of forced entry, sir, there isn't much we can pursue." It could have been someone with access. Maybe a spare key. I did not need help guessing who that might be. By noon, Karen's SUV appeared again at the edge of the tree line. She remained inside, engine running, as if waiting for me to react. Finally, I walked toward her vehicle and raised a hand. She lowered the window slowly, a smug expression already in place. "You can't prove it was me," she said before I spoke a word. "You were in my home," I said evenly. "You overestimate your importance," she replied lightly. "But if you want all this to end," her voice dropped softer, "the offer remains. My cousin stays for a few days. Everything settles down." I stepped closer. "You're trespassing. You've crossed every boundary." Her smile thinned into something colder. "You have no idea how far I'm willing to go." Her words lingered with me the rest of the day. That night, I installed trail cameras around the property. Sleep barely came. Every creak sounded like footsteps. Just before dawn, my phone vibrated with an alert. Motion detected. I opened the live feed. A shadowed figure in a heavy coat crouched near my back window. Moments later, a second figure stepped into frame, carrying what looked unmistakably like a crowbar. I dialed the sheriff's office immediately. "This is an active break-in," I said quietly but firmly. "Two individuals on my property right now." Minutes stretched like hours until headlights pierced through the trees. The intruders fled into the woods just before the deputies arrived. Karen was not among them, but deep down, I suspected this was no coincidence. One deputy reviewed the footage on my phone, his expression tightening. "This doesn't look random," he said. "You should consider pressing charges." I stared into the dark, snow-covered forest. No more warnings. Karen had made her move. The following morning, I drove to the sheriff's office with the trail camera footage saved on a thumb drive. The same deputy from the night before met me at the front desk. He watched the grainy video twice, his jaw clenching slightly. "You were right," he said at last. "They aren't strangers. One is her cousin. The other is her nephew. We'll handle it." By mid-afternoon, patrol car pulled into Karen's driveway. From my porch, I watched her burst outside, robe whipping in the wind, arms flailing as she shouted at the deputies. They remained calm and unmoved. 15 minutes later, her cousin and nephew were escorted into the back seat of the cruiser. Karen stood rigid in her driveway, face flushed red as the vehicle pulled away. She was not arrested. Not that day, but the message had finally landed. Someone had drawn a line and held it. I assumed that was the end. 2 days later, the county zoning office called. "The complaint against your property has been closed," the clerk informed me. It was filed without merit and included falsified documentation. Her voice lowered slightly. "Off the record, word travels quickly around here. She's lost significant influence." For the first time in weeks, I exhaled fully. The flyers stopped appearing. The slow drive-bys ceased. Even the Facebook group fell silent. Karen kept her distance, still left the trail cameras in place. And I kept the axe near the door. One evening, just before dusk, I found another envelope resting on my porch. Inside was a single sheet of paper. "You win for now. No name. None needed." I fed it into the wood stove and poured myself fresh coffee, watching snow drift lazily beyond the window. The cabin returned to its familiar quiet, broken only by the crackle of firewood. The truth was, I had not won anything new. I had simply protected what was already mine. In places like this where certain people believe control is their birthright, standing your ground is victory enough. The deputies never uncovered definitive proof that Karen had entered my cabin that first time. They suspected lockpicking rather than a copied key. Her cousin and nephew accepted a plea deal for trespassing. Officially, her name remained absent from the paperwork. Unofficially, everyone understood. Months passed. Spring melted the snow. The forest turned green again. Life returned to its quiet rhythms. Occasionally, I would see Karen at the general store. She pretended not to notice me. I would nod once, deliberately. She always looked away first. Some battles are fought to claim something new. Others are fought simply to show you will not be moved. This was the latter, and if you're drawn to stories like this real life, HOA drama in the middle of nowhere, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the next one. If you've made it this far, drop a like and let me know, and tell me in the comments what would you have done if a neighbor tried to pull something like this.